must give nothing less than the whole of ourselves.
Inevitably, a long life can pass by many milestones. My own is no exception.
Queen Elizabeth II passes from the Abbey, consecrated and dedicated to her life work.
Throughout all my life and with all my heart, I shall strive to be worthy of your trust.
It is you, if I may now speak to all of you directly, who have seen us through and helped us to make our duty fun.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong.
From the nation's capital, all sides, all the time, I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. The big story tonight.
Britain's longest-serving monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, has passed away.
This triggered an outpour of tributes and condolences from world leaders and common folk across the globe. Mobile journalist Julie Baiza gives us a front seat to the big story.
Queen Elizabeth II, the longest-serving monarch in British history, died at her Scottish Highland retreat on Thursday at the age of 96. Her reign spanned 70 years. Queen Elizabeth II will be replaced by her eldest son, King Charles III. In a statement, the new King of Britain said that the passing of his mother is a moment of greatest sadness for all the members of the royal family. The new monarch said that he knows her loss will be deeply felt throughout the United Kingdom and the other parts of the world. Mourners also flocked to Balmoral, Scotland, to offer flowers to their dearly departed queen. Over in New Zealand, which is part of the Commonwealth of Nations, some paid tribute to Queen Elizabeth II by performing the Haka dance. Philippine President Bongbong Marcos and the First Family also visited the official residence of British Ambassador Lowry Bowfields to mourn the passing of the Queen. In his message, President Marcos Jr. expressed his sadness for the death of the Queen. He added that Queen Elizabeth exemplified to the world a true monarch's great dignity, commitment to duty, and devotion to her realm. The chief executive also said that together with many Filipinos living and working in England, he has developed a sense of affection for her as a queen, mother, and grandmother. Mobile journalist Julie Baiza, We Are One News.
Now that the London Bridge has fallen, here's what we know about the British royal family line of succession. Charles, Queen Elizabeth's eldest son, has ascended as the new King of England. He was the longest-serving British monarch in waiting since he became heir apparent at the age of 3. King Charles III will be turning 74 this year. King Charles and the late Princess Diana's first son, Prince William, Duke of Cornwall, is now the first in line to the throne. Prince William's children with Kate Middleton, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis are next in line. Fifth in line to the throne is Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex. His children with Meghan Markle, namely Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana, are also part of the royal succession.
Today the crown passes, as it has done for more than 1,000 years, to our new monarch, our new head of state, His Majesty King Charles III. And with the passing of the second Elizabethan age, we usher in a new era in the magnificent history of our great country, exactly as Her Majesty would have wished, by saying the words, "God save the King."
All right, what a way to end the week. Last night we all slept hearing of the news. The condition of the Queen was actually not in the best form, and then we woke up today hearing the news of her death.
Queen Elizabeth definitely hurdling a lot of challenges during the pandemic. Her health She went into the hospital several times, and she spent the whole summer in the Balmoral, not being able to keep with traditions, some certain traditions. Like, for example, she had the chance to appoint the incoming Prime Minister, Liz Truss, not in the Buckingham Palace anymore, as with tradition, but already in the Balmoral Castle. Quite symbolic, she got to do that before passing away September 8th, the birthday of Mother Mary. And also, the whole of UK is in mourning, wearing black.
And exactly, I mean, the very presence of the monarchy still is a divisive discussion, especially in the UK. But what's interesting about this is that regardless of which side of the fence you're on, we have to acknowledge the fact that she has been a constant presence, not just in the UK, but all over the world for 7 decades. Imagine from the age of steam to the age of the smartphone and even the COVID pandemic. She's been a constant presence. And that's something that we also have to acknowledge. And rightfully so, a lot of people are in mourning because of that.
Well, she's definitely a sign of stability for all. I mean, several words that I heard that have been constantly repeated about her: sense of duty, responsibility, authority, grace, regalness, and discipline. And
we can
these
go
are
on
the
and on
words,
for over with all those words for the Queen, of course, considering, of course, the span of time that she actually is a world figure.
Well, this is the first day in Operation London Bridge, which is the protocol right after the death of the Queen. Definitely a lot more to happen in the coming days, and we'll be keeping you more informed about those traditions after the break.
But for now, we're going to pause for that quick break. We'll talk about the impact of the passing of Queen Elizabeth II to the monarchy and world history with historian Jose Victor Torres. That and more when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
Queen Elizabeth II reigned during a period of unprecedented technological, social and political change. When she took the throne, there had been debate over whether her coronation should even be televised. By the time of her death, she'd recorded a comedy sketch for broadcast on Twitter.
Oh, really? Please.
As head of state, she presided over the end of Britain's once mighty global empire and watched the United Kingdom's fractious exit from the European Union.
My government intends to work towards a new partnership with the European Union based on free trade and friendly cooperation.
Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor was born in London on April 21st, 1926. At the age of 10, her father unexpectedly became king after her uncle abdicated, making his eldest daughter the heir apparent. In 1947, she married Prince Philip of Greece, and the following year, their son Charles was born. In 1952, upon the death of her father, Elizabeth became queen at the age of 25. Amid cultural and political upheaval in the second half of the 20th century, the monarchy's image in British society shifted dramatically. Moments of pageantry and spectacle, like the fairy tale wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana Spencer, were quickly soured by the unravelling of the marriage and Elizabeth's perceived lack of empathy with her popular daughter-in-law. But Queen Elizabeth retained the nation's affection. A new generation of royals entered the scene, coming across as more in tune with the times. Although in the waning years of her life, controversy arose again over the family's relationship with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and her son Prince Andrew's association with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The final years of her reign saw domestic political turbulence too, as Scotland debated independence and Brexit reopened tensions over Northern Ireland. While she had no official say in government matters, the Queen met every week with Britain's Prime Minister for a confidential discussion. She worked with 15 Prime Ministers over 70 years of dedicated service. Caroline Hyde, Bloomberg.
Wearing a face mask outdoors will soon be optional after President Marcos approved the IATF's proposal. Health Officer in charge Maria Rosario Vergeres said they are just waiting for the executive order from Malacanang to implement the policy.
It's going to happen soon. So it's within a couple of days maybe. Pag lumabas na po yung EO, it's going to happen.
Former Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship Joey Concepcion welcomes this development, saying the face mask mandate has become harder to implement outdoors.
I think it's time to really move on. Nakikita natin that the optional use of face mask at ginawa ng Cebu at dito ay sa pananaw ko tama naman yan eh.
But for the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the push for voluntary mask wearing should be allowed both indoors and outdoors, as they believe people are already responsible enough to know when they need to voluntarily wear their face masks in public spaces.
Wearing masks, there's nothing wrong with that. Not wearing masks, again, there's nothing wrong with that. Again, it's a voluntary decision. And I think people now are responsible enough when they know that they have to, on certain circumstances, they have to have that extra protection. Voluntarily, they should wear the mask.
However, some health experts are cautious of this proposal. Infectious disease expert Dr. Ronjin Sulante earlier said the Philippines has a different healthcare system compared to other countries that have eased their face mask rules. The DOH itself was in favor of retaining the face mask mandate. However, Vergeres says a compromise had been reached with the IATF to allow a balance between health and economy.
Agree naman ako doon na hindi naman natin kailangang gumaya sa ibang bansa. Pero importante pa rin yung mga experiences ng ibang bansa para makapagbigay sa atin ng mga rekomendasyon. We cannot also naman remain to be doing so restrictive, no? Yung mga very restrictive implementation while the other countries are not doing it anymore.
However, the agency is not discounting a possible rise in COVID-19 infections once this policy is in place. That's why the DOH is reiterating its call on the public to continue following other minimum health protocols and to get boosted. For News 5, JC Cosico, We Are One News.
Shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family.
Tributes from around the world and even from Filipinos continue to pour in for the late Queen Elizabeth. But did you know that the British Empire was once a part of Philippine history? Mobile journalist Yeda Pascual gives us the details.
It was in the year 1762 when Britain occupied Manila. During those times, there was a war between England and France, with France being an ally of Spain, which was then the Philippines' colonizer. With this, British forces targeted Spanish colonial capital of Manila, as well as nearby Cavite. The rest of the country, meanwhile, remained under Spanish rule.
When the British finally came, they immediately attacked Manila. They took over some of the districts in order to position their cannons. And after almost a 2-week siege, they managed to take over Manila, and began, of course, what we know today as the British occupation.
What's clear is the plan to invade Manila did not come from England, but from Madras, India. Madras was a British colony that at the time supplies warships and war materials to the British Army. This is also the reason why the British forces was accompanied by Indian soldiers or sepoys. Many of them chose to stay and live in the Philippines after the war. In 1764, the Treaty of Paris was signed. That's why after 1.5 years of British occupation, England finally surrendered Manila to the Spaniards. Mobile journalist Yeda Pascual, We Are One News.
Now, to talk to us more about that part of our colonial history, we have with us on the show Professor Jose Victor Torres from the De La Salle University Department of History. Prof. Vic, good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Sir Jesse and Miss Gretchen. It's nice to see you guys again. And good evening to all of your viewers.
First, this of course is not a often known fact of our history, the British occupation of Manila and Cavite. How crucial is this piece of history?
Well, the British occupation was actually, as it was said in the video, it was just a small event. No? But in the small picture, it also meant we know the extent of the British Empire during that period. But in the bigger picture, the British invasion of the Philippines proved to be fatal to the Spanish colonization of the Philippines, because the vulnerability of the colonial empire now, not only internationally but locally, eventually came out. It was shown, and right after the British occupation of the Philippines, there was a lot of reactions now for many Filipinos, because they suddenly realized, well, it turns out they were not as strong as as strong as they seem to be. And so it had a very effect that would eventually last for, well, almost half a century, almost 100 years, until finally changes in the our history, would bring about the so-called nationalist movement that would eventually lead to our independence.
Okay, Prof, just taking a look at history and putting it side by side, it's quite debatable who would have been the better colonizer, because some people say that the British was able to take good care of the countries under them. Naming Australia, naming Canada, naming New Zealand, and looking at also the colonies of Spain. How do you think the Philippines would have changed had we been occupied by Britain for a long time?
Well, it would basically just be the same as Spain. And what do I mean by that? Remember that when we were occupied by Spain, it was already the age of the colonial empire, and of course that colonial occupation would affect largely our history. We must remove the idea of the fact that colonialism is good. The colonialism actually was evil, and the British occupation of India wasn't that exactly peaceful. Now, remember, they had the mutinies that eventually happened with the army, and of course the problem with regards to their the development of the economic products, which led to, of course, many of the decline of some economic principles and products related, of course, to the British colonial empire. In the long run, probably I could say that, except for the fact that it may have been a benevolent colonialism, it would just basically be the same. Because remember that in the 19th century, Europe itself was transforming. And from the English, we have the philosophies of liberalism that began in France. Then, of course, the establishment of a constitutional monarchy. Then, of course, the economic development of the Europe. And this would eventually also lead to Spain, who is part of the European Empire, to start enforcing the very same thing that's being learned in England, and to the Philippines. We eventually would have the Spanish Cortes. Then, of course, we would be open to world trade at the start of the 19th century. And, of course, the idea of liberalism would permeate Spanish colonial society in the Philippines. So a lot of these things are basically the same, because we have to understand also that it's although they were different countries, they were affecting each other.
Now, I want to pick up on one point you raised earlier, Prof. Torres, how colonialism and imperialism remains to be sticking points when we're talking about monarchies. That leads me to my question, where is the monarchy headed now, the British monarchy to be exact? I mean, historically, how do monarchies stand the test of time, especially at such crucial junctures, such as the death of a central figure as big as Queen Elizabeth?
Let us put it this way. Whenever we look at a constitutional monarchy, the parliament and the prime minister are the ones running the state. the royalty are the ones running the country, and sometimes it could always been said that the royalty was just like a figure, of the empire, okay, and of course it was the parliament and the prime minister that was running the actual government. No, so how big was the impact of the death of the Queen today? With regards to the governance of the British Empire, we still can't say, because the government has already changed, and we've seen a lot of things happen in England during the past few years. At the time where the Queen Elizabeth would only give statements, okay? But with regards to the recognition of the Britain as a country, of course, it is the words of the Queen or the royalty that would hold a permanent message to the people. I would also like sometimes to compare it the Prime Minister and the Parliament run things internally, and of course the British Empire, the royalty, with the ones running the country externally. So there is still an impact. There is still a very, very large impact. But of course, the separation of constitutional duties of these two entities eventually would provide a good balance of governance for the empire.
Okay, again, impact of the monarchy still, of course, staying strong. Again, thank you very much for your insights this evening, Professor Jose Victor Torres from the De La Salle University Department of History. Now, right after the break, we'll check in on the Filipino nurse who was awarded the UK's highest honor, the George Cross, by no other than the late Queen Elizabeth II. Not when a big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
For her high calling and equipped her with wisdom and strength of character, will continue to guide and inspire her.
That the high and mighty Princess Elizabeth Alexandra Mary is now, by the death of our late sovereign of happy memory, become Queen Elizabeth II.
Steamed through it after the Queen and President Eisenhower had opened it together. He went to Balmoral to stay with the royal family, remember? Mr. and Mrs. Nixon were host and hostess at the residence of the American ambassador and Mrs. Hay Whitney.
The British and American people are as close today as two peoples have ever been.
Pleasure, Mr. President, to present you the Churchill Award in recognition of the leadership you have shown to the world in recent months.
Thank you very much.
Your country and mine have together shown that freedom works. Mr. President. Disagree from time to time we may.
Parsons, the Filipina nurse from the UK who administered the first COVID-19 vaccine in the world, mourned the death of Queen Elizabeth II. She tells her story of meeting the Queen in this report.
Like her own grandma. That's how Pinay nurse May Parsons described Queen Elizabeth II when she met the Queen last July at the Windsor Castle. Parsons was awarded the prestigious George Cross in recognition of her contribution as a nurse who injected the first COVID-19 vaccine in the world outside of clinical trials.
It was so special. It's honestly so surreal that when you meet her, she's like a Lola. I remember my Lola when I met her, and she's so sweet and she was so funny. And she was old. She was 96. She was frail, but she had so much life in her.
Parsons was one of the last Pinoys who personally was with Queen Elizabeth II before she passed away. Because of this, the Pinay nurse said she will never forget her conversation with the Queen.
She said to me, "Oh, so what do you do?" She asked me, and then I said that, I'm a nurse and I managed the COVID wards, and I also did the COVID vaccination. And she actually asked me, "Are you still alive then?" So, buhay ka pa? So, kasi syempre, ang dami kong diba, I dealt with COVID and the vaccination. So she was obviously trying to crack a joke. And I was so taken aback. I was like, and then she repeated it again because I didn't quite get it because I wasn't expecting that joke. And then we all laughed.
Despite her age and the threat of the pandemic, Queen Elizabeth II herself gave the award, something Parsons will carry in her heart for a lifetime.
We weren't sure whether she was going to be the one giving us the medal. Obviously, Charles was doing 100 people's investiture that day, so we only found out kind of half an hour before that she was actually going to do the award. So for me, that says a lot about dedication. That means a lot about service. We felt really special. You know how when people kind of hold you dear and when they make you feel special, and that's what she did with us. And I think that's what she did with a lot of people.
Parsons also gave a message to the longest-serving British monarch.
Thank you for being constant through all the trials and the tribulation that the nation has gone through. She's always there to gather the people around her and give her their strength. And and I think a lot of people respect her for that, and a lot of people love her for that. And I just want to say thank you for all those things that she's done, not just for the UK, but across the world in the Commonwealth. And she can now rest. I mean, she's been working since 2 days before she passed away. So I suppose now she can rest. And she's probably nursing a broken heart from losing Philip as well not too long ago. So, she can now rest in peace in God's grace.
For News 5, Marty Bautista, We Are One News.
May Parsons shedding some tears there, sharing with us a very special moment in her life, and more importantly, a closer look into who Queen Elizabeth was. And for most of her life, she's largely remained an enigma, not giving anything away to the media, and she's been criticized for that. But on the other hand, it's also one of the things that made her such a symbol of strength.
Exactly.
People were able to hold on to her strength of character and to her being just there all through the 7 decades that she's ruled.
And it's exactly one of the very things that she's being praised for. I mean, just sticking to her duty as queen and not really interfering with the matters of the state as well. And seeing how heartfelt May Parsons' message is, that's really a proof of just how many lives the Queen has touched, at least over the 7-decade reign.
One thing Filipino that she mentioned there, though, that she's just like your Lola.
Yeah, exactly.
And may we continue to view her, and as we go about mourning for her life, many more anecdotes will come forth, and we'll definitely be staying in tune to that.
And that's the big story tonight. For more updates, follow News 5, the Philippine Star, and Business World online. You may also log on to onenews.ph for more in-depth analysis. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
The big story is also available via Signal Play app. Make a free account now at signalplay.com and stream One News anytime, anywhere. I'm Gretchen Ho. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.